Podcasters Roundtable, Round 54, Evolution of a Podcaster's Gear. Yeah, I know we've talked about gear before. I think I was looking through the archive and we've dedicated at least 2 rounds to it, but that's the thing a lot of podcasters want to talk about. So we get that request a lot, and I'm a gear junkie. I have no problem talking about that. And so it's always about how do we talk about it differently. So the goal for this one is to talk about the decisions that got us to another piece of gear or didn't, right? Why we decided not to get a piece of gear. And so that's the mindset. Of course, it's a roundtable. We mix it up, throw out anything you guys want. It's your job to interrupt the chat. It is your job to toss out questions, opinions, ideas, whatever. Toss it out there. So if you want to be on the roundtable, definitely go to podcastersroundtable.com/guest or check the show notes, either on the website or in the app. Check the show notes, click the link, sign up to the, it does sign you up to the email list, and you'll get a questionnaire that says, what do you want to talk about? All right. And maybe you're going to put down podcast gear, and I've got to come up with another subtopic of gear, right? So we enjoy it. Podcasters enjoy it. So let's have some geeking out with 2 new roundtablers and, of course, the co-host. Let's start there. The most important, Dave Jackson. Welcome back to the roundtable.
Ray, glad to be here, and looking forward to this. This should be an interesting topic because I don't know that we really know where we're going to go. So it's you keep your arms and hands inside the ride. So I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting, and ready to light this candle.
All right, and it looks like you got a new candle to light.
We do. I was hilarious. I haven't even unboxed it yet.
Remember, we're on video, Dave, and audio. Yes,
right. The Audio Technica BP40. Is it the high LPR 40 killer? Look, it's black. Ooh, and it's thick. So that's exciting.
And it's a weapon.
It is.
It can be a weapon. I saw that at the NMX NAB show, and I got to speak onto it for a second or speak into it, but you're on the show floor, so it's hard to tell.
Exactly.
But it did seem very interesting, so maybe we can dig into that. Co-host number 2 or number 1, you can switch it up. You guys fight. You guys fight amongst yourselves. That makes for a better roundtable. I guarantee it. Daniel J. Lewis, welcome back.
I'll throw my high LPR 40 at Dave Jackson. He can throw his BP 40 at me, and we'll see who ends up with the bigger bruises.
and the audience will decide who's the bigger geek.
Right.
So we're throwing gear. That's great. We're podcasters. We don't care about money. We just beat each other with gear and get a new one. Not the case. All right. Hey, new roundtabler, number 1 or maybe number 2. Bryce, welcome to your first roundtable.
Thank you very much. I'm Bryce Cooke. I do a improv comedy podcast known as Comically Unrehearsed. I think Ray is one of 2 people who have actually watched it. So you want to be number 3, there's an open spot. Just go to my channel. It'll be sweet.
I was telling Bryce before we started that I don't typically consume like a comedy podcast or comedy sketches on YouTube. And I was supposed to be working on this last night. And yes, last minute, of course. It's the roundtable after all. This isn't the School of Podcasting or the Audacity to Podcast. And I got stuck for like 45 minutes consuming them. The goop one and the funeral, the casket one. This good stuff. So check it out. I didn't expect to actually laugh. No offense. But I did. There's a good cast of characters over there. So
it's fine. Most people have fairly low expectations for me. So I'm really good at this point.
No. All right. Thanks for joining us. And on the end, new roundtabler, Alan, welcome to the roundtable.
Thank you. Thank you very much. God, I'm such a fan of all you guys. I'm kind of a fanboy here. This is great. I'm a podcaster. I'm the co-host of the Dental Hacks podcast. I'm a dentist in Saginaw, Michigan, and about a year and a month ago, we started a podcast by dentists for dentists, and that's what I do. And I've made a lot of really poor choices about gear, so I think I'm in the right place.
That's perfect. And look at that, a dental podcast. So there's a niche for everyone. It's a different roundtable.
Oh, yes. Yep.
I love this medium. So much fun. All right, let's dive in. I thought that, I guess it's only appropriate. Well, again, in the lead up, on the event page, the write up, it says, how do you know when it's time to get your next piece of podcast gear? It says, can you stay with the gear you started with, or is it best to evolve your setup? Best is a tricky word there. It may be fine to stay right where you're at. So in relation to that last part, let's talk a little bit about maybe since it is the evolution of a podcaster's gear, our own history with gear. I want to know, I guess we're audio podcasters first. I tend to think video, and Bryce does video. Yeah. But what was your first microphone that you considered your podcast microphone?
My first podcast microphone was probably, like when I was dipping my toes into podcasting, was the AT2005. That's what I went with, mostly because it was black and more attractive to me than the AT2100. And
it is cooler
at the time. Yeah. Yep. And they have a similar sound, so it worked well for me. Yeah.
They're the same microphone, right? You guys?
Pretty much.
They have the exact same frequency response, the AT2005 and ATR2100.
Yeah, it's like the little switch is the difference or something. It's nothing. Like you said, one is black and one is silver, and the black one is cool. They fluctuate in prices, so I end up with the silver one. But I love this thing. It's I've beat it about the virtual face, and it just keeps kicking. But not the case for all of them. So I often tell people, have ATR, will travel type of thing, right? I mean, I think you could buy this microphone. You probably bought it not only because you probably heard it was good, but it was fairly affordable, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that was definitely why. Plus, just because I have a number of co-hosts with me, so it was the easiest to convince them to buy as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go. And so, except that I know that the USB connection on this can go out. I've seen it happen several times, and I would pay 2 times what I pay for this microphone to get more solid, I guess, internals on that USB, because you don't want to rebuy something. But Daniel, you just sent one of these back.
Yeah, I haven't received it back yet because it was just last week that I sent it back. But the ATR 2100 USB has a lifetime warranty, whereas the AT2005 and Samsung Q2U, which is very similar in this class, they both have 1-year warranties. So I think that, especially knowing that the USB goes out, unless the 2005 is better on its USB hardware, I think the 2100 is the clear winner if you're ever concerned about the USB going out. If you use the USB, the XLR on the microphone still works, but the USB doesn't.
Did you have to keep your receipt and send it back with it or anything? Or
they do say that you're supposed to keep the receipt or proof of purchase and send that back, but I'm hopeful that because it has a lifetime warranty, that because I don't have a proof of purchase, that maybe they'll still honor it because I'm still alive.
Whose lifetime are they talking about? That's the question.
Yeah.
Right.
I actually have several of the 2100s. I have 4, I think, and so I found myself sending them to guests because when you get a guest, you're not sure what kind of equipment they're going to be using, and this is a really reliable and really good sounding microphone on the USB. So I send them to guests, and they travel well, they mail well. Let's just say that.
Interesting. And yeah, so I mean, I think, that's a newer microphone within the last couple of years. And, Dave, what was your first microphone?
My first one was a Shure SM58 because
Solid.
I had it lying around. And then from there, Scott Fletcher, who coined the phrase pod fade, was doing a show called Pod Check Review. And Scott just has great pipes. And of course, I said, well, what microphone are you using? Because, gosh, if I use his microphone, I'll sound just like Scott. And so it was, I think, an Audio-Technica 3035. It's a big old condenser microphone. And that's where I learned the lesson that condenser microphones pick up everything. And so from there, I went to, I think, the RE320.
So you went dynamic to condenser because clearly it was going to make you sound awesome.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? It's going to give you DJ voice.
Yeah. And I forget
but back to dynamic.
Yeah, back to dynamic after that. So, and that was, I didn't buy that microphone. I think at that point I went back to 58 somewhere probably. Once I figured out it was just annoying because at that point I was podcasting in the basement with the washer and all sorts of crazy stuff going on. So I think I went back to the 58 to cut down on that. And then later I went to the RE320. And I only did that because I got it to test and they asked me if I want to buy it. And I said, I'd love to. It's just the problem is it's $300. Would you like to barter and I'll trade advertising space on my show? And they went, okay. So that's how I ended up with the RE320.
Yeah. And Nick Suberling in the chat says his first podcast microphone was the earbud headset from his flip phone. How old is Nick, first of all? Second of all, Nick, this doesn't count as an appearance for your t-shirt. Third, when did you start podcasting, buddy? That flip phone? I didn't even know they came with headset microphones. So some of us have had some interesting stuff. I think I actually had a really bad Radio Shack one. It wasn't for a podcast. I think it was more of, can I get my voice in his computer? Had a 3.5 millimeter jack. And then my first real one was the AT2020 condenser microphone.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way I sound on that thing. And then, again, this evolution of a podcast gear, I realized this doesn't work in my environment, right? So I probably went to the PR40 at that point. But, yeah, and so, Bryce, what did you go to? Well, what's the evolution there? Do you still use the same microphone you do video and,
Yeah.
I mean, do both, or you take the video and turn it into audio? What's the workflow there?
So I do all kinds of things. I'm going to be really honest. I love to play with everything. I'm a jack of all trades, but a master of none, which is really unfortunate. But let's see, with me, I went from the AT2005 to the RE320 just because I thought it produced my voice better or captured it better.
And that's key. I mean, that's an important element.
Yeah, but from there, I mean, I've tried all kinds of different things. Right now, I'm on the Rode NTG3. I've played around with the Hale PR40, which I don't like. Daniel, I know that you're about it, but I'm not as much about it because I don't like all the low end that gets added.
I would say that there's been a reverse in that.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually, Bryce, on that.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
You know what's funny about that microphone is if you look at the frequency response, and I think it's even billed as like this sort of, that it has this high-end pitch, but it's a lot of mud in that bottom end. I don't know if mud is the right thing, but I can't make that microphone sound the way I want, no matter who's talking on it, until I fix that low end with the EQ. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, like if I'm doing voiceover work, I do not want any of that. I want to be able to completely control my EQ, and that's why I couldn't. I sent that microphone back.
Yeah, well, the NTG3 shotgun that you're talking about, I mean that's a keeper for life, man. I love that. That microphone.
I know.
Well, you can do anything. You go through war with that microphone, it'll still work for you. So
I might become a journalist, and I might go through war with that.
There you go. Well, you got the gear. Now, do you have the guts?
No. I'll just be honest. I can't do it.
Cool. So, that's sort of where several of us started. Daniel, I don't know if did you want to toss out your first microphone?
My first microphone was the little stick microphone you get for free with a sound card.
Yes.
And a metal hanger with pantyhose on it for a pop filter. So at least I had a pop filter. I knew that much about the microphone. That was an embarrassing thing to have to ask people, because I was single back then, but to ask around can I have some pantyhose that you don't need anymore? But then after that, I borrowed a few microphones. I think maybe a shotgun microphone at one point. There was a Sennheiser MD421, I think, dynamic microphone I borrowed from a place where I worked at that time. Just borrowed it for a little while. But then I got into taking it more seriously, got a mixer, and got the cheapest dynamic microphone, XLR cable, and mic stand available on Amazon, which I think was only $20 or $30 at that time, all three of those things together.
Nice.
And that's why, I used that for a little while. It was like a Nady SP1 or something super, super cheap like that.
So that brings up an important point, because we'll talk a little bit about maybe when do I get into a mixer, but before that, you went cheaped out on your microphone. Still went cheap microphone, okay? But I see you in front of a PR40. So what's that decision? Was the cheap microphone a bad decision? Why did you graduate?
Back then, it was, the cheap microphone was what I could afford, and I needed to do more than just the stick microphone I had.
Right.
I needed something that sounded better. And so I got the cheapest thing because I didn't have much money. And then at some point I decided I want to take this more professionally. I want to try and do voiceover or make a business of this. I don't know. I just had some idea of wanting to do something. This was still before I launched the Audacity to Podcast. I was doing my comedy show. And so I thought, well, I hear everybody talking about the PR40, so well, I guess I'll get it. And so I got that, just thinking, well, this is probably the best microphone. And that decision point for me was in thinking, I want to improve my audio quality. I want to sound better. And for me, I saw that by investing this much more money in this thing called podcasting that I was struggling to do consistently, I felt that I would feel then more attached to do it consistently at that point, which it did seriously help with that as well.
And I feel like we have to be careful because we're going to run into the, you have to buy an expensive mic. Because you're talking about, I want to take this seriously. I bought a PR40. Dave, I mean, we have to spend $300 to take our audio seriously, to take our podcasting seriously?
Well, that's my worry is I'm always afraid of, if I just had this microphone, I would get more listeners. The one thing that's holding me back isn't the fact that my show sucks or that I never promote it. It's the fact that I don't have a $400 microphone. Yeah. And I'm like, that's not, in some cases, entirely true.
Now, that's your concern, or that's what you hear from other people? Because we talk to a lot of beginning podcasters, and I think a lot of podcasters think they are left out of being considered having a quality podcast if they don't buy $300 microphone like a PR40 or something, right?
I hear that a lot. I heard I was listening to I just discovered a new podcast from a guy called the Podcast Dude, and he said that you should at least minimum put out $300, and I was like, I don't know if I'm down with that. It's I always say exactly that microphone is $60 and this
I'm
one,
pointing to the ATR 2100.
yes, thank you, is and the PR40 is $300. Does the PR40 sound better? Yes. Does it sound $260 better or $40 better? No. And so, to me, I guess what's the opposite of an audio snob? To me, it has to be listenable. And I've heard, I was listening to, I won't out them, but I heard a somewhat prominent podcaster. I don't know where he was podcasting because normally a show sounds great, but it was just layered in hiss, and I was like, wow, this is a little different. But the content was still good, so I sat through it. Now, if that was that way every week, I'd be like, I don't know. And that's to me, when your sound becomes so distracting that people are focused on how you're saying it so that they're not listening to what you're saying, that's when it's time to move.
I feel like there's just a certain level that if you can reach a certain level of sound quality, even if it's not engineered maybe as well as it could be, you reach that certain level and it becomes listenable, and I'm not going to turn it off. I put a joke on one of the Facebook sites or Facebook pages a couple weeks ago, like the guy who has the most unbelievably engineered intro that he paid a few $100 for, and it sounds fantastic, and the podcast sounds like a really bad cell phone call.
I hear that. That's not uncommon. Someone will pay for a bumper. And you're like, oh man!
It's always a super bombastic bumper too, where you're like, it sounds like it could be Howard Stern's, and then it's like it's terrible. And I think it catches up with you, and I think you're gonna. So it's almost like you have to have this like baseline, decent level of sound. You can go up from there, you can play from there, but I feel like once you have that decent level, I'm gonna say the 2100 is exceptional for the amount you pay for it. It really is. It's a really exceptional mic for how much you pay for it, I think.
What I like to explain to people is think about it like with a TV. If you want a TV and you don't have the $1,000 to buy the 60-inch 4K TV and all of that stuff, don't settle then for the 55-inch 1080p if you really want the 60-inch, because that 60-inch is just 5 inches bigger at 4K, and you're always going to feel that, well, I already have a 55-inch. I wish I got the 60-inch. Instead, just get what meets the need. Like in my case, I started with that basically $10 microphone, XLR microphone, and it met the need. But at some point, I decided I really want to improve this, and that's when I made the big jump. It's good to make big jumps. Don't buy a 39-inch TV if you want a 42-inch TV. save up more, buy the 42-inch, or just buy a 27-inch TV if that'll meet your needs for now.
Hey, Gary Pierce in the chat says, first was a PR40 because he was doing a show with Bob Heil. So, you probably want to play in the same ball field if you're doing a show with the man who made the microphone. But he says he has 3 PR40s, and because he records in noisy conference halls, he needs to keep the ambient noise down. So there again could be an evolution situation where you go into a conference hall, you have these condenser microphones that pick up everything, and you're like, wow, I need more rejection, right? I need to hear what's just in front of the microphone and get that ambience of the conference hall, but not everything mixed in with my own voice. But Alan, so you have several ATRs.
Yep.
And the thing about the ATR is it's really good, but again, when things are almost too good to be true, when you're packing a ton of value, because the ATR, I can make the ATR sound like the PR40 in post-production. It sounds great. You're seeing me use it right now. I love it, but something has to give when it's that cheap. And that's why I would pay twice as much. The internals probably, they got to cheap out somewhere. So I wish they would invest a little bit more. But that, to me, the ATR is my sort of minimally acceptable entry point. And that's about $50, I would say. Because, again, have ATR will podcast. You can plug this thing into your computer, USB, go into Audacity, and sound amazing if you know what you're doing. I know a little bit about where you're recording, how to record it, post-production, stuff like that. So what is your minimally acceptable gear budget? Maybe when you got into podcasting, Alan, how much did you spend? And now what would you say was your acceptable budget?
I'm probably not your norm. The first mic I got was a Rode Podcaster, which is like a couple $100 or maybe $180. I think I got it on eBay, which is a USB mic. I'd say as USB mics go, it's pretty high end, but actually just sound check between the 2100 and that mic, the 2100 sounds better, to be honest. So this was my 39-inch television. I for a couple episodes I went with this, and then I bought this, which is it's a Rode Broadcaster, and it's a condenser mic.
Do you watch Fro Knows Photo?
Yeah, that's where.
Is that where you got that?
Yes, but the other thing, Adam Carolla uses all.
It sounds really good.
And what's funny is I got an email from Mike Dawson, who's he's the audio engineer for Adam Carolla. He swore by it. This was like a year ago, and I'm like, okay, well, if Adam Carolla sounds good on it, I'm going to get it. So I made the choice, like, not messing with it. But on the other hand, I use a mic processor. I use a DBX 286, and that can make a pretty bad mic sound pretty good. There's a lot of, so I haven't had any trouble with it. I love the mic. I'm done buying mics, I think. But your budget is everything. I have to tell you, I threw a lot into this hobby. So my budget was, I was more.
That's dentist money.
I was a kid in a candy store, though. Like, I decided this was the hobby I was going to have, and so I bought a lot of stuff. There's
something to say about that, right? We all have a hobby, and I get it. I mean, some people, you don't have the budget, but most people, we spend money on our hobby. So again, what would be your minimal acceptable, maybe not even for yourself, but if you're recommending to another podcaster, say, take at least $50, $100.
Yeah. I mean, and it depends on, I have to say the mixer, or I use an audio interface, but the mixer is a big step up. I mean, that I feel like that's when you're starting to take it seriously a little bit, because USB mic, you can sound pretty terrific, but it's like there's a lot. I mean, everyone here knows there's just a lot more you can do, a lot more flexibility you've got when you use a mixer. So I think that's when you're getting serious, that's where you're going to head, I think.
I don't know. I wouldn't say that a mixer. I mean, you have an audio interface, so you're taking an XLR connected microphone, professional microphone. You're plugging an audio interface. A mixer, that's not going to give you that many more options. Maybe a mix minus.
I mean, when I say audio interface, I mean mixer too. I've never had any luck with an actual physical mixer. I went right to the audio interface, actually.
Yeah, but I would say that again is a situation where what do you need, right? Mm-hmm. If you're never going to do, I wouldn't even say aux minute. Who's played with an audio interface? Well, Alan, you have one. Do you do a mix minus setup with it?
I do.
And that's handled via software?
Yeah, it's a let me think. It's a Focusrite.
Yeah.
And their software there's a little learning curve. Once you get it, it's not too bad. I did this. I went hog wild last month and a half. Our podcast has a roundtable aspect to it, so I wanted to be able to record everyone on their individual tracks, and that is a difficult proposition if you want to record it in one place. So I literally have 4 PCs with individual Skype lines going into the actually they go into, each one has a mic processor, and then they go into the audio interface, and I do an individual mix minus out. So it's complex. It works terrific, and I can edit each individual track. When you've got 4 people going who are going to step over each other, or someone's going to have a Skype blip or whatever, it's awesome. And why did I do that? Because I could, and because I was tired of editing people out, editing over sound.
So you started with an alternative and
Yep.
decided that the evolution was that you needed to control over those individual tracks.
Exactly. I started with call recorder on the Skype plugin call recorder, and that worked for at least 8 months. So it's not. But I decided I wanted to do this. Actually, Dan Benjamin put the idea in my head in his podcast, and I was sort of obsessed with the idea of doing it. So I finally got to there. I would not recommend that if you're not typically having 4 or 5 people on your podcast at any given moment, because it's overkill, to be sure.
Right. And Bryce, you're an admitted gear junkie yourself, so maybe I won't ask you about your minimally acceptable budget, but I'll move into the next thing. What would be your essential pieces of podcast gear, I guess, for a starter, in your opinion?
So I guess for a starter, there's a lot of things to consider. Like, a mixer can be very scary if you're brand new and you're like, I don't know what all these knobs mean and what has the best preamps and all this. You're learning all of this terminology that you don't know right out of the box, and so it can be really, really terrifying. For me, I have a board. I work with an X32 Behringer because we have like a podcast studio here in Florida now, but I honestly, all of Comically Unrehearsed is done on location with a Zoom H6, and it's really simple. And I think even using a Zoom H4 is like perfect for that if you're only going to have like one other co-host. Zoom H6 particularly, I chose that for Comically Unrehearsed because it records to mono. Like you have separate multi-track recording when you plug it into the computer. So that's amazing because you have to usually pay quite a bit to have that multi-track recording. So when I'm editing multiple voices and I decide, hey, I don't like the fact that he's breathing so heavy in the mic while this guy's talking, I can kind of take some of that out. So I would say starting out, honestly, if you don't know where you're recording, if you're going to your friend's house or you're going to some room that's big enough to hold people, I would look at field recorders first. I think they're really easy to get to, especially with eBay, and the Zoom H4n is constantly going down in price.
It is.
I would definitely, and plus, honestly, if you want to, you can even use the Zoom H4n as a third microphone if you didn't want to buy more than one. I mean, you got 3 right there that could hook you up. So.
Yeah, I'm on board with the audio recorders. That's how I record everything. I don't even record into the computer. I'm recording this into a Tascam DR60D, and it's what works for me. But it took me some time to find that, right? So, Daniel, what would you say are the essential pieces of a starting podcast setup?
Well, shock mount is important, but you can do without it as long as you don't touch the microphone or touch anything attached to the microphone.
Or if you're like me, just don't move your hand.
Yes, if you are a ninja. But the thing I think is really important is a microphone stand. We talk a lot about the ATR 2100, AT2005, and the Samsung Q2U. All of these microphones have these skimpy little stands that are only about 6 inches tall, maybe only hold the microphone about 4 inches up off the desk. And I sent these to a couple of my co-hosts, and recently I needed to use one of these myself because I tore down my studio momentarily, and I realized, man, this is uncomfortable. I lowered
you got to stack it on books.
Yeah, just stack it on books or hunch over or lower your chair or something weird to get close enough to the microphone so that you're getting a good audio signal. So I think an essential piece of gear that you might not think of is a good microphone stand. If you can, get an overhead boom arm like most of us will have, where it's a Heil PL2T is probably the best one, $120, but you can get a Newar or whatever.
Newer, yeah, I don't know what that's.
Yeah, from Amazon for $20. It's a basic arm sort of thing, but that's really nice that it makes it movable, lets you get it out of the way easily, and lets you position the microphone exactly where you want, so you don't have to worry about bumping the stand.
Cool.
I mean,
so,
I'm sorry. Just interjecting, like with Daniel, the funny thing is, like, most of the reason why I buy most of my equipment is because it looks cool when I talk to people on the internet.
Hey, let's not devalue that, because I am a gear junkie. I actually like the way things look. So, you know, I even get the black 2005 versus the silver ATR. I get it. I get it.
So when I bought my boom arm, which is the same boom arm Daniel has, I bought it because, one, I need something that would be able to support heavy microphones, but I bought it just because I was like, hey, this will make me look like I'm on a radio show. This is cool. This is awesome. But like when I bought it, I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is so much better. It clears up my desk space. I can position it right where I need it. And you didn't think it was an essential part, like when you're starting out, like how important mic stands could be. And so, yeah, I mean, I totally understand where he's coming from on that.
You know, there's something really cool you can also do with a boom arm, a mic boom arm. If you watch any of my newer videos from the Audacity to Podcast on YouTube, you'll see my new video intro where it has this, like, it basically blasts you with all kinds of views of podcasting equipment and gear and software and stuff. But wherever you see motion, I got that motion by hanging my DSLR upside down from my boom arm and just moving the boom arm very slowly, very smoothly.
Yeah, it's a cheap jib.
Yeah, it's a jib that add just a little bit of image stabilization to it, and it looks beautiful.
Yep, the things you can DIY these days.
Yeah.
There's something else too. It depends on if you're recording guests remotely or if you're in the same place. It's a whole different gear selection if you're recording all in the same place or if you're recording remotely. That's something to think about when you're putting your kit together too.
It's a hugely important point, and I tell people all the time, please ask me before you buy gear, because everyone's setup is so individualized. It's so different. And we'll see podcasting packages, and half the time people are getting stuff they don't need, or it's over the top, or it doesn't fit their situation. You know, it's not a studio base. They don't need a mixer. You know, you mentioned the Zoom H6. That's a studio in the palm of your hand. It is a mixer.
Pretty much.
I mean, so it really depends. And I would say half and half. The people I deal with, half the people, they're out of the studio, right? They might be doing something on location, and that is an entirely different setup. And are you doing video, right? There's video podcast. I mean, Bryce, you do video. So, and Daniel, you just mentioned a camera as well. So, you know, what's the evolution of that? My first video camera was just terrible. It was heinous.
I think,
Sorry, go ahead.
well, I think one of the things that fuels the evolution is a pain point. Like, you know, Alan was talking about, well, I was going to do this with 4 guys, and it's when you sit there and you spend a lot of time doing something, and you think, man, if I had this other piece of equipment, yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's going to save me time. And that's where we go back to the, you know, you're going to pay in one of 2 currencies, time or money. And so, or you try something new and you're like, oh, I could do this. Like, I mean, I'm a guy that does most of my podcasts by myself, and I'm sitting here with a mixer with like 8 channels because on Saturday morning I do a live call-in show where I'm playing live sounds and I'm talking to Jim Collison. You know, so it's like I need all these inputs all of a sudden. Now, normally there's no reason for me to have that, but because of one show that I just went, hey, what if we added phone calls? What if we added this? And so it was, the whole thing was just, let's add one more thing, and it was like, oh crap, I need a new mixer now. So
that's key, Dave. That's a good transition into, you know, how do you know when it's a good time to move to a mixer? And a lot of times, in order to get what you need or want on a mixer, you have to buy way more than you actually need or want, right? So you're staring at a mixer with tons of channels, maybe just so you could get 2 aux ends, right?
That's it.
And so tell us a little bit about the decision to get a mixer that is more than you needed.
Yeah, we had tried a couple different things. Like, we were using Uber Conference to get phone calls, which actually worked on a Google Hangout but we weren't live yet, or something. There was something weird, and it was like, ooh, this is cool. But Uber Conference, every time somebody called in, like would make this boonk noise, and you're in the middle of talking about something. There was no way to mute when somebody entered the call, which was kind of hilarious. So we decided, hey, I really like this phone thing, but I'm not going to use this service. So we tested the free stuff, basically, to see if we liked it. We determined, yeah, we did. This would be fun. And growing up, I always wanted to be Phil Donahue and say, is the caller there? And so I tried that, and then it was a matter of, okay, now how are we going to do this? And that's when I looked at my mixer, and I was like, okay, well, I can't do a mix minus with Jim and a mix minus with a phone with only one auxiliary, send. And I was like, so then it was just a matter of going around and looking at mixers and going, okay, here's this has two, this has two, this has two, this has two. Okay, which one's the best value for that money? Because in almost all cases, I was getting a bunch of stuff that I just didn't want. So it was kind of weird looking for, the best value. So I ended up going with a Behringer, just because I had Behringer mixers in the past, and it wasn't a matter of everything else was like another $50, and I was into more stuff that I didn't need. So
you notice that they put a ton more inputs on them than they do auxiliary outputs. You have to buy a lot of mixer to get 4 auxiliary outputs, I swear.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the keys when it comes to podcasting gear, which makes total sense, we're pretty new, we're repurposing music equipment, right? So a lot of the stuff is not built for us, and slowly I'm seeing that change. Before we got on this live roundtable, I was actually helping a host set up his setup, and I actually used this tiny Behringer 302. It has an analog input-output for a headset microphone. I would never think I would touch something like that. I didn't know it existed, but it met a need, believe it or not. And so, things are evolving. I'm pretty sure that is a fairly new tech that you wouldn't have needed in music production. But yeah, we're usually repurposing something that was meant for music, right? So you could bring a whole band in, but you might only need to feed out 1 aux or 2 aux for whatever you're doing. And I don't produce music, so I could start to sound really stupid here in 2 seconds. We'll throw it to Dave. He can play some guitar and tell us what we're doing wrong. But, also, I've also heard a lot of times, buy more mixer than you need, because back to that evolution, you might grow into it, right? Have you heard that before, Daniel?
Oh, yeah. And that's what I knew when I bought this mixer. Now Dave and I have the same mixer. It's the Behringer X1832 USB. My first mixer was a Behringer 1204 line mixer, which had no inserts, audio inserts, which allow you to connect to gear like a compressor limiter gate. I didn't realize that back then, and I bought this compressor limiter gate because I wanted my live shows to sound better. Emphasis there, that's why I bought it, is because my live shows, not because of recorded. But and then I realized, I can't connect this to my mixer. So I started looking around, and like Dave, I was looking at what can meet the needs, and I found this mixer, and it was bigger than I needed it to be at that point. But I knew if I get this now, it has room for me to grow into it. There's plenty of expandability here. This will probably last me for a while. And it's funny that we're having this conversation today, because just yesterday, Facebook reminded me that 5 years ago, I received my Behringer X1832 USB in the mail.
Facebook.
It showed me the photo that I posted back then. So this thing has lasted me 5 years. I've used as much as every single input and output except for 2 on it. And so I've grown into it.
Right. So how do you know if you're a podcaster? I guess we should answer the question that's in the write-up that says, can you stay with the gear you started with, or is it this is when I say best to evolve your setup, I guess the question is more, can you stay with the gear you started with? And I guess it depends, right? You can buy an ATR 2100, right, Alan, and stick with that.
Yeah, for a little while. Well, I think what happens is it really depends on where your podcast goes too.
Yep.
And I think all of us, the creative types, how many people bought the right thing right off the bat? I bought so many of the wrong thing over time, and it's like you don't know until you try it. So I think we have a tendency to buy stuff in hopes, and it's taken me a while to land at the setup that I really like. But I will say the other thing is the goal for me has been to buy the stuff that makes it so the inputs are clean enough and good enough that I don't have to do a lot to it in post. And I heard Daniel talk about that before I ever started a podcast. And I didn't understand it until I did it for a while, if you know what I'm saying. Like, my goal is to just try and make it so the stuff that goes in doesn't need to be edited much after that.
Yeah, I feel like that's a clear example of evolution of podcasters' gear, is that you get into it, you're willing to sort of, take on that extra work. If someone says, hey, you buy that, you're going to have to do more work in post, whatever. You're like, yeah, it's okay. 3 months in, you're like, this is a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. And I just didn't get it. Yeah, you just don't get it until you have to do it for a while.
But, yeah, you could tell a kid till you're blue in the face, don't play in the street. But until that car buzzes them, hopefully it doesn't hit them, they realize, hey, Dad was right. I probably shouldn't play in the street, or whatever the example is. But, yeah, and, it's funny because you develop a podcaster's ear, too, for what sounds good, what doesn't sound good. And Bryce, was it you? You mentioned that you got a different microphone because the way your voice sounded on one, right? And that's part of the sort of the process too, is we can all say we use ATR 2100s or PR40s, but like Alan said, until you get on that microphone and test it, you don't know.
That's what eBay is for.
Yes.
And listen to your voice at double speed too. That's something I discovered with my own voice. Is I think my voice by itself sounds fine on the PR40, but at double speed, I realized I really do not like the way my voice sounds through this microphone at double speed, because a lot of podcasters now are listening to podcasts at faster speeds.
I'm a purist. 1 times, baby. 1 times. So Bryce, was it you who said that?
Yeah. So I went from an AT 2005 to an RE 320, just because to me, in terms of the diagrams and all the science behind it, it seemed that the EQ on that mic was flatter than the AT 2005. And so for me, I bought that though. I guess my traditional, when I go to say how do I need to upgrade my gear, how do I need to get better, is a combination of budget and just blatant need. So, like, for everybody on my podcast, Comically Unrehearsed, on my YouTube channel, for them doing that, the AT 2005 is, like, perfect. It's fine. I can still kind of EQ it. I can EQ them all pretty quickly in
Are those
post.
the mics that you have on the tables there that they're all talking
Yeah,
to?
they all have AT 2005s. I'm the only one who has the RE320, which I actually go in and bring it down to match the others, so that you don't really tell the difference. But that's one of those things where most people, they're not actually going to know the difference between the RE320 and the AT 2005. Like, if you don't have a trained ear, like, they're not going to notice.
Especially if you have different voices on each of them. That's the other thing.
Yeah, so for me, it just came down to, like, a need, because I started doing, like, I do some music production in terms of, like, they've never aired to YouTube because they've never been good enough, but I've made, like, parodies, and I've made stupid little raps and things like that as, like, something that I will do with my friends. And so having that microphone was a lot easier to do for music, whereas I would not use the AT 2005 for music necessarily. But I think it sounds great for voice and podcasting for just talking. But I think that was a big part of how I started selecting gear, is like, this is what I want to do. Is this mic capable? I would do tests, and if I couldn't, like, try to figure out some way to do it in post with my budget at that time, then I was like, all right, let's start researching and see what mic can do that for me, or at least make my life easier. And so that's how I've made my evolution throughout.
It's a tough topic. I always feel like, we start to go down the gear rabbit hole, we instantly alienate a lot of people, or they get upset and say, oh, you're saying I can't do a podcast without spending X amount of money or something, and I would not say that. And that was kind of the question: what's your minimally acceptable budget? For me, it's around $50. Dave put the current price of the ATR. It fluctuates all the time. It used to be like $37. It was $45, whatever. It's cheaper than a video game, so I don't find that to be much of a stretch. So I am definitely saying you can start on a budget, and Daniel started on what he had, what he was given, right? So even if you can't spend $50. I think the key is to start, and that evolution will occur maybe when you say, oh, people are listening, or someone comments and says, hey, I can't really understand you, there's a lot of hiss, and then maybe you clear that up, right?
Here's the way that I see it is you get into some of these recommended microphones, the USB XLR microphones that we typically recommend. That's really good, and you don't have to upgrade. People may never notice if you need to sound better. But what I recommend, and why I have to remind myself, is don't upgrade unless I need to do something differently. Not just better, but differently, or do something new. Like with my MDX 4600, a compressor limiter gate, I needed to do something that I couldn't do before. A bigger mixer, I needed to do something that I couldn't do before. My microphone right now, I'm not happy with my voice on the PR40. I'd like to switch out to maybe an RE320, maybe try the new Audio-Technica BP40, but I don't know yet. But that's just doing something maybe better, and I realize, well, that's probably going to cost me an extra $100, $200 to switch out the microphone, even if I sell the one I have. So I could really use that $200, though, to get something that would allow me to do something I can't do, like maybe a teleprompter or a tripod or a jib for a camera or all kinds of other things I could spend the money on. So I think that's the guideline for me, and that I recommend, is when you need to do something that you can't already do, that's when you might want to evolve your equipment.
Right. Or using a stick mic and it just sounds terrible.
Yeah, no, that sounded horrible.
And you've decided, and you've made it past the infamous episode 7. Maybe you're going to be here for a while, right? I don't know. Start a Patreon campaign for your gear. And, there's something to say about saving your pennies for the next gear upgrade, right? I mean, do you guys have a sort of a gear jar?
I planned mine out when I upgraded. I did. I budgeted for it, and of course I went over budget, but I planned for it. So I think it's a smart thing. You figure if you're into it, you like podcasting, you're gonna want to upgrade more than likely.
Yeah, and eBay is a good point. I tell people all the time, hey, you can sell this stuff, right? If you do buy the RE320 and you stop podcasting to eight episodes, someone's going to get a great deal on an RE320. I mean, but what? You rented it for a little while to try podcasting. Yeah. Congrats. I think that was great for putting yourself out there. So not much loss there. But what's the so in this evolution, you've had all kinds of gear over time. Most of it we haven't even talked about. But what's the piece of gear that you have picked up in that time that you now could not do without? Dave?
For me, and it's interesting because...
Don't tell me your headphones.
No. Number one, the one thing we haven't mentioned, pop filters. Got to have a pop filter.
You have one. Daniel has one. I see foam going on my side, Bryce. And, I think Alan had probably some foam there, too. So we're all conscious of it.
Yeah. The thing I don't need but I love is my DBX 286. I have an A. I think they sell an S now. And the only reason I got that is I was at the New Media Expo, and there was a guy there with an Aphex 230, which goes for about, I don't know, $1,000.
Yeah.
And it was like just amazing. I mean, you could put, I don't know, anybody on this thing. You just sounded like, in a world kind of guy. And I was like, this is awesome. And then I saw the price tag, and I was like, all right, well, maybe if I, get a second mortgage, something like that. And so, and then when it's weird because when you look at something like that, and then you hear the DBX, and it's definitely cool, and then it's like half the price. Well, now it seems like a bargain. Hey, it's only $300. Where like if I had seen it before, it's like
right.
$300. I can't afford that. Now it's like, well, at least it's not $1,000. So I didn't need it, but man, do I love that thing.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. Then, what about that? Starting out, people they don't like their voice. They think they need to be the radio guy. They want this overpowering. Hey, I'm a podcaster and I'm in your ears and I'm here to sell you stuff. Like, I mean. There's something to say about that. That's part of the inexperience, right? Of never doing it before or being fearful of getting on the microphone, and you want to sound almost not like you, right? I mean, I can tell you, I think I still struggle with that, and that's part of that. I talked about the EQ and dropping that low end. I might have moved into a Heil because it did have more of a broadcaster sound. Now I find myself cutting out much more. I'm much more into a natural sound, and that's been my own personal evolution. But, you could get into a piece of gear like you're mentioning, Dave. I'm actually going through a DBX right now. You're not hearing it. You'll hear if you're listening to the audio-only version, you're hearing the DBX 286 going into the Tascam, which is actually better than what you're getting on the Hangout. But, why did I buy that? One of the things it has on there is an expander. You may know it as a gate. But it will cut out that background noise. Now, it doesn't. People think it's some magic tool that eliminates background noise. It doesn't. It just sort of turns off the microphone when you're not speaking, right? But if there's background noise, it's still back there. It helps a lot.
When you're using a group like, like this, where you've got like Skyping in 4 people, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant because, I mean, dogs running in the background, it just all that stuff. I have a rack full of those things, and I absolutely love them. They're great and I like the noise gate more than the compression. To tell you the truth, it makes a big difference, I think.
Yeah, and so Dave, I guess I was going along diatribe there. That's the right word, but I was going to say, like, what is that feeling in the beginning where we want to sort of overbuy to compensate? You bought it because you were impressed with the Aphex or something because it had that sound.
Yeah, and it just, I think it goes back to a lot of us wanting to be on the radio.
Yeah.
Right. I know I did growing up. It'd always be cool, and you just put it in, and it's, I don't know, it's some sort of weird. It's like sugar. You just want more of it.
What's the evolution there? Because you're not using it. You're not doing that to your voice now per se.
The evolution for me there was at that point. It was.
Or are you?
Yeah, I think at that point it's kind of what Daniel mentioned earlier. There comes a point where in your head where you justify stuff because I want to take it seriously, which like it doesn't help my content at all. Well, it helps it sound better. But it wasn't like people were tuning out. I didn't have, if we go back to the stick microphone or whatever. So, yeah, that's why you said, what one did you not really need, but now you can't live without? So I don't really need it, but, man, I'm glad I have it.
Yeah. And, Bryce, I did notice when I was watching your videos last night that the AT-2005s, which is what is sitting – so you've got 2 tables, essentially. You have 4 or 5 guys sitting up there. They're like maybe 2 feet, 3 feet apart. I mean, it's hard to tell in video, right? Perspective is weird, but I'm not hearing a lot of bleed. It's a sound, and you're not using a gate, right?
No, not at all. And that's the cool thing about there is a bit of bleed. A lot of that I do take care of in post, just because I can go in and kind of tweak things. But really, honestly, I don't have to do that much editing on the bleed. Part of that is because you've got a lot of people who are talking with intermingling parts, and so we're trying to pick up some of that laughter to kind of be like its own natural laugh track. But no, they're condensers. Not condensers, I'm sorry, dynamics. So they do cut out a lot of that based off their pickup pattern, which is nice.
Yeah, just talking about gates made me think, I bet Bryce has considered it.
Trust me. Yeah, it's been on my mind for a long time. But you
don't need it. So there's an evolution case, right? It's like we could go to this thing. How much would it improve our audio? I'm not sure it's necessary.
And that's been the thing that has kept me from doing it, is because no one has said, well, hey, I hear a lot of people and a lot of noise over the voices that makes it difficult for me to understand. And since no one has said that, and I haven't noticed it, except for maybe when I'm like scrutinizing it in post, because I hate everything you produce,
Sure.
It's just, but it's one of those things where I'm like, nope, if the audience doesn't notice it, I'm not going to worry about it. So that's been my thing. I'd rather spend money.
You're a stronger man than I am.
Yeah.
The audience never says anything about my sound, and I still obsess about it. It's ridiculous.
Here's the thing I tell people before. The single worst person to be working on your audio is you. And as podcasters, we're the engineers, we're the talent. It's a bad mix.
Real bad.
The pun. There's the pun.
Well, and the worst thing is if you complain about it on your show. Because I was like, can you guys hear this? Can you? And it's like, and finally some guy, Dave, I have no idea what you're talking about. I can't hear it. Please move on. And I was like, so we're just obsessed over it.
Yeah, totally. So give yourself a break is the lesson there. And we hear so much more than the audience ever hears. Like, does the tech get out of the way of the content? Right? Can I hear the content and I don't hear distracting noises? I can actually hear your voice. You're good, man. You're good. And the rest of this stuff, there is that sort of law of diminishing returns, right? As we buy more and more equipment, not only does it actually get more difficult, right? You buy more equipment to, in theory, make things easier. Sometimes it makes it more work. So there's a fine line there between sort of streamlining that setup to make it less work and then actually adding more work into the mix, so to speak, again. But who else has a piece of gear that they now have that they don't need, but they can't live without? I'm trying to think what that would be.
All of it. I can't.
All of it.
I need all of it.
I need all my gear.
I have a rack of equipment that I mean, I could easily do what I've been doing with the stuff I had, but I did this because I wanted to. It's fun, and I was, it's the hobbyist in me, I guess.
I guess the
I'm
genesis
enjoying
of that.
it, but
Yeah,
I don't.
think
Yeah.
I think that question is, could you do? Why couldn't you do without it, right? And what would you lose by giving up your rack of gear? Just the fun of turning knobs,
The
or
fun
would
of turning
would it actually
knobs,
affect your quality?
editing individual tracks. So
There
I
you
mean,
go.
like, the sound is a little bit better. But I will, like I said, I've not had an audience member say, "Oh, you really gotta get off they're talking over each other, or whatever." It's just me, and I mean, I think it's the hobbyist in me. I think I'm done. I think I'm done buying. I'm not
No,
sure.
you're not.
I'm going to
You can tell.
podcast movement, so I'm sure that
Never
I'm
done.
not done.
Never done buying.
You're not done. You're not done. I mean, I have, one device that I don't need. I record with it all the time, and I tell people, I don't really need this, but I still use it. If you're watching the video, you can see it right here. I'll lift this up, and then I'll tell you what it is.
I was going to ask you about the FET head.
That's the Fed head, and so it's it's called an inline preamp. It gives me 20 dB of, they say, extra clean gain. It is a little piece of magic. I don't need it. I can get it done, but it oftentimes helps me get it done a little easier. I may have to do a little less work in post, and so I just love it. Totally not necessary, right? And I've recently done a review of sub $100 mixers that all give great gain. And I think in the beginning, one of the reasons I got this was probably because I wasn't maybe doing something right. Maybe it wasn't gain staging properly. So I was using more gain in one part of the stage than I needed, and I wasn't getting the sound I wanted. I got the FET head to, I think, cure the problem. And so there's these things we do, right? We could buy something because we're trying to fix something else, but maybe it's just a matter of learning that piece of gear a little bit better. I know a lot of people talk about how they can, you can have cheap gear if you know how to use it right. I mean, I can make most video cameras look good now that I understand lighting and exposure. Don't get me wrong. Don't send me out in the field with an SD 4x3, 640x3. I can make that as good as it can be, but there are limits. But, it could be just a matter of learning the gear a little bit better. I don't know. Did anyone have a piece of gear that they've learned over time and actually made that piece of gear better? The DBX can be a tough one. It's not necessarily intuitive.
It's not. There's a lot of YouTube videos on it. Thank goodness for that, because I've had multiple pieces of equipment I took out of the box and was absolutely stymied. My mixer, I have a mixer that I don't even use because mixers, I could never get the thing to work. The audio interface was easier actually because it was on you manipulate software instead of manipulating, physical knobs. I don't know. So I had a hard time with that.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, John Buchanan in the chat, he says a poorly set up gate compressor will really screw up an audio file, and people will get a gate. They'll hear us talk about gates, and again, I alluded to that sort of magic element where, hey, all of a sudden my background noise is going to be gone, which is not true, but it can help. And if you do have a lot of background noise and you're not setting it up right, it actually introduces more issues than it solves, because now the person who didn't notice you had noise in your audio suddenly notices it because it's not there, and then it's there. It's not there, and it's there. So in that case, that's not really a good purchase. Anyone else got a piece of gear that they absolutely...
Well, the DBX, when I first got it, I remember the first episode I put it out. And
Dave really loves the DBX.
I did, and the minute my first episode, I put it out, and 2 days later I got an email that said, I don't know what you did to your sound, but don't do that anymore. and because I was like, oh, listen to I can sound big voice man, and all of a sudden I went from sounding like this to, all right, and it was like, man, these just people's speakers are blowing out, and the bass is just going off the hook, and I had the big boomy voice, but I went a little too boomy. So,
yeah, very easy to do, especially post-production. Yeah. We get gear, and you can really crank on that audio and change it dramatically for the worse. And
that's where you should always listen to your podcast in more than one location. Like, I always try to listen to mine in the car, not just with earbuds, because I know a lot of people that love to hit that bass, buddy, and it's just, you can't, in some cases, understand them, because it just becomes like they're talking through a kazoo. It's just because your speakers just can't handle it. But boy, they're big and boomy. And that's where, Ray, I think you were talking about. Like, if you really want people to understand, there's a novel idea what you're saying, you might want to cut some of that stuff underneath 200 out.
Yeah, and a recent article from NPR was talking about just how much of that low end they cut, like way more than I thought they should ever be cutting. But that's part of their signature sound. So there's so much to it. Look at this. We've gone almost an hour. I think we've almost only talked about microphones. This is why we can do more rounds about gear. And I don't hear a lot of complaints when we talk about gear. Again, if you go over to the podcaster studio. Was that a slip or not? That's a Daniel trick to plug my other show. If you go to podcastersroundtable.com/guest or just the website, you can sign up and tell us what you want to talk about. Now, you also see there on that page, it sort of describes what we're looking for. This is less how-to. If you noticed, we didn't talk about a lot about a how-to. It was more the why, the what for. That's what we're looking for, right, on this show. So while we're talking about gear, hopefully we talked about the decision process to getting to that next piece of gear, and we could totally go on for another hour, right? I think there's more here to sort of pick clean, and we can do that. But we will work our way out of here to let the awesome chat room go about their lives. You people on the archive audio podcast, you can pause and come back. Please do. But we'll move out of here. If you guys, please tell us where we can find your show, your podcast, as we go out, your name, your show, so we can check it out. And if you have one last thing to depart, some wisdom about evolution of a podcaster's gear, feel free to share that. We will listen. We won't turn it off. So I'll put Dave in the hot seat and say, Dave, thanks again for co-hosting duties. And as always, the check is in the mail.
Yeah, I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. And check this out, Ray. The way I had an evolution of my equipment page is it evolved into its own domain at bestpodcastinggear.com.
Man, really just taking tricks from Dave. He just ripped it right out of the Daniel J. Lewis page of promotion there. You see what happened there? That's your URL, buddy. That's it. But thanks again. Schoolofpodcasting.com. I'll do it for Dave. Great show. My favorite podcast about podcasting. Check it out. Daniel J. Lewis, co-host extraordinaire. Thank you so much. He doesn't get paid just because, well, we let him promo himself so much. Right?
Yeah. I'm from theaudacitytopodcast.com, and the one thing that's completely separate from the stuff we've been talking about, where I have evolved something I've been doing, is when I purchased a lighting kit, and it really helped me to make my videos a lot better because I didn't have to time my videos around good weather days. I had one daylight calibrated CFL light bulb and an open window, and I'd always have to try and balance them out, make it. I think it looked good in the videos I had before I did a lighting kit. But now I have a lighting kit. I don't have to wait for good weather days. I can record at night if I want to. And it added new features, and it didn't cost that much either. I've got that link if you're interested, and more over at theaudacitytopodcast.com.
Yeah, I guess the same URL twice. That's a good way to see. Daniel's always going to figure out how to get around the limitations here at the Roundtable. One URL, 2 times.
You mean I can't say theaudacitytopodcast.com more than once?
Only because you're not getting paid. You're not getting Dave bucks. That's for sure.
Did you say theaudacitytopodcast.com?
I believe it was theaudacitytopodcast.com, Dave.
Got it. Okay, just making sure. Taking notes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, do you have the audacity to interrupt us again? Dare you to podcast. Hey, Bryce, thanks so much for being first-time roundtabler, but as you know, once a roundtabler, always a roundtabler. You passed the audition. You're welcome back.
Thanks you. So just had to do it trial by fire. Do it live. It's fine. Right. So I'm Bryce Cooke. I do improv comedy podcast. Actually, Ray's new favorite is what I'm told, at youtube.com/the Project, because I find when you're coming up with names for things, if you put your name in it, then you own it, and then it's really clever for no one because it's the Bryce Cooke Project. But it's fine because I have a lot of audacity myself to do a lot of things that I probably shouldn't. But just trying to be as cool as Daniel and Dave and Alan and Ray, but I can't do it. But check out my channel, youtube.com/the Project. Super underrated, pro stuff. But my last piece of advice is if you have an idea, if you have a dream, if you're like, I really want to, produce podcasts, like, start anywhere. It does not matter. You'll start learning, and that's really the biggest thing. I don't know how many pieces of video gear and stuff that I've bought, and I've been like, this does not just work like everyone makes it seem so easy, but just toying with all that stuff, toying with that gear, learning what can help you is like part of that process and part of making those decisions of, I want to go next level, how do I do that? And being able to make that educated decision based on what you've learned and what works for you. So.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's a great tip. I feel like, because we don't often share the trial and tribulations of getting stuff to sound good. I mean, you may think I buy the DBX and just poof. It's, hey, Ray's audio. Man, all I did was sit here for hours on end, twisting knobs or asking in the Google Plus communities, right? I mean, and I alluded to the fact it's not an intuitive device. I won't lie. When I got the DBX 286, I thought, hey, you plug that thing in, and twist a few knobs and you sound fantastic. I actually found it very challenging. They use different terms for everything. That is one of the tricks to podcast gear is you got mixers that say FX send, aux send. They all use different terms. So read the manual. I guess I'm saying that as from one guy to another. It's okay, man. Pick up the manual and read. I've actually found that some of the Canon stuff is actually pretty humorous. So check it out. And maybe a Mackey's good too. So read your manuals or don't, whatever. All right, Alan, thanks again for being first-time roundtabler, and I'm sure we'll see you back.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm Alan Mead, co-host of the Dental Hacks podcast. You can find it at dentalhacks.com. And you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm not a dentist. And you probably aren't. That's fair. Give us a try. You might be surprised, pleasantly surprised. But I guess the one thing I would say is it is so easy to get super involved with the gear, especially when, once you start getting into it, the whole world opens up. You're like, oh my God, I had no idea there was so much gear you could have. Just remember that as much fun as it is to play around with the gear, it's still all about content. It's still all about content. I mean, if you're putting out, as Dave said earlier, if you're putting out crap, you can only polish a turd so much. So definitely remember that it's about the content. And I mean, it's about having a good time. So thank you guys so much for having me. I can't even believe I'm on this show for as many times as I've listened to it. So this is very exciting for me.
All right, well, you're going to be a podcast movement, so we're going to see you in person. We may do a live roundtable. If we see you, pull you over.
All right, I'm there.
Mic, so. Awesome. All right, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. I guess we're out of here. Check us out. Next time will be Podcast Roundtable Round 55 and starring you, right? I mean, get those submissions in. I pull from the list. If I make the event page, if you comment, I know you're interested in that topic, might pull from there. Pretty last-minute guy. So you can just ask Alan and Bryce. I think I sent those emails late last night.
It was like 2:20 a.m. I'm like,
oh, because
sure,
I'm watching your videos. It was 12. I was done at 11.
Got it. Sorry, I delayed everything. I apologize, guys. I'll try to be less talented in the future.
There you go. Stop that. All right, you guys. I guess that's it. We will see you next time. Wave. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.